Behind palace walls, whispers turn into storms. King Charles, pale and tense, was seen leaving his private office, clutching a letter marked private and confidential. Hours later, sources inside the palace revealed that a hidden act of betrayal had surfaced, one so personal, so cruel, it shattered the very trust between King Charles and Queen Camilla. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The uneasy calm within Buckingham had always been deceptive. Silence, there was rarely peace, only pressure waiting to burst. On this day, that pressure finally broke. Staff members exchanged nervous glances as muffled voices escaped from behind the king's locked study door. The tension was so thick it could be felt in every corridor, every echo of hurried footsteps. A loyal aide, one known to be quietly aligned with. Princess Anne had delivered a confidential report straight into the king's trembling hands. Inside, it lay words that would change everything. It wasn't a mere political misstep or a trivial misunderstanding. It was betrayal dressed in royal grace. The report spoke of meetings private, calculated, and deliberate between Queen Camilla and a small circle of individuals the king had never trusted. They weren't friends, nor allies of the crown. They were whisper merchants, manipulators of reputation, men and women who traded truth for influence. The correspondence was precise. Phone records, notes, and quiet promises that would set one royal woman against another. The purpose was unmistakable: to weaken the reputation of Princess Catherine, the very figure the king regarded as the future of the monarchy. Charles sat motionless for minutes that felt like years, staring at the papers spread before him. The weight of the crown had never felt heavier. His face drained of colour, the veins in his temples tightening as he reread the words again and again, hoping there was some misunderstanding. Yet the evidence left no space for doubt. The betrayal wasn't whispered by enemies of the monarchy. It was born from within his own marriage. Behind every carefully orchestrated engagement, behind every smiling photograph, lay a secret effort to undermine the one woman who embodied the quiet strength and grace his late mother had once personified. Meanwhile, Catherine remained completely unaware of the turmoil surrounding her. That morning, she had visited a children's hospital, her smile lighting up rooms heavy with struggle. She offered words of hope to parents who clung to faith and compassion in the darkest moments. Her calmness, her unforced warmth, it was exactly what the monarchy needed to survive the modern world. Yet, as she performed her duties with humility, others conspired in the shadows to dim her light. Senior courtiers began to notice subtle changes, nervous glances between advisors, conversations that stopped abruptly when Catherine entered the room. The phrase "royal betrayal" started circling among those who dared to whisper, passed from ear to ear like a forbidden prayer. They all sensed that something catastrophic had been set in motion, but no one knew where it would lead. In the king's mind, the memories of his mother's reign returned vividly, how she had endured betrayal, whispers, and deception, but had always held her composure. That lesson echoed now, urging him to act not out of anger, but out of duty. Yet duty and heartbreak rarely walk together in silence. A storm was forming, one that would shake not just a marriage, but the very foundations of the monarchy. The king's patience, once boundless, was nearing its end. The trust that had taken decades to build had been undone in a single breath. But what exactly did Camilla do to provoke such fury, and why would it lead the king to make the most shocking declaration of his reign? The betrayal wasn't political, it was personal. A secret exchange between Queen Camilla and a powerful media executive revealed a chilling scheme. A campaign designed to quietly tarnish Princess Catherine's public image. The revelation struck at the core of Charles's principles. For years, he had fought to unify his fractured family, but now, the weapon used against his beloved daughter-in-law came from inside his own marriage. At first, it began as a rumor, an untraceable whisper carried through corridors where loyalty was currency. But when those whispers reached Princess Anne, they came with proof. Her trusted aide, a woman who had served the royal family with unshakable integrity, had intercepted messages that could no longer be dismissed as idle gossip. The emails were explicit. They detailed quiet coordination between Camilla and select members of the press, journalists known for their ruthless precision in crafting narratives that destroy reputations. Each message was timed, deliberate, and unmistakably malicious subtle digs disguised as exclusive insights, shaping public opinion against Catherine without a trace of direct blame. For Camilla, the motive wasn't power alone, it was something far more dangerous. Jealousy. Catherine's rise had been effortless. She didn't need to demand respect. It gravitated toward her. Crowds adored her warmth, her composure, her empathy. Every photo, every public moment reminded Britain of what true royalty looked like, a woman who led not by command, but by example. To Camilla, that was unbearable. Decades of struggle, manipulation, and survival had earned her a crown, yet Catherine's quiet grace had outshone her without a single word. The Queen, who once held every advantage, was now haunted by insecurity in her own palace. When the evidence finally reached King Charles, it arrived in a sealed folder late one evening. Inside were printouts of messages, summaries of meetings, and transcriptions of phone calls made to select editors. One line, cold and calculated, stood out. Her image needs soft erosion. Gentle contrast makes the crown look fragile in her hands. Charles read it over and over, his mind refusing to believe what his eyes had already accepted. Those words were not written by enemies, they were sanctioned from the heart of his own home. His hands trembled, the letter slipping from his fingers. Observers later recalled that his face turned white as paper, drained not just of colour but of faith itself. For years, Charles had endured ridicule and public skepticism, always seeking unity within his family. But now, standing alone in the dim quiet of his private quarters, he realized the division had come from within. Betrayal in politics was survivable. Betrayal in marriage was not. His silence that night was deafening. The next morning, courtiers noticed a change, a cold stillness around the king. His eyes avoided Camilla's. Words were fewer, and his laughter, once warm and gentle, had vanished entirely. Inside the palace, whispers turned into dread. Senior staff began referring to that day as the fracture, the moment when Charles emotionally withdrew from his queen. From that point forward, every smile between them felt rehearsed, every public outing a performance masking a kingdom quietly breaking apart. But betrayal rarely ends in discovery. It unfolds into confrontation. And this confrontation would alter the monarchy forever. It was a confrontation years in the making. Behind gilded doors, voices rose, accusations flew, and tears fell. Camilla, cornered and desperate, denied everything, but the proof spoke louder than words. For King Charles, this wasn't merely about loyalty. It was about the monarchy's survival, his legacy, and the woman who had become the heart of the nation, Princess Catherine. The silence that preceded the confrontation was almost cruel. For hours, Charles rehearsed the words he would say, the tone he would take, and the restraint he would try to maintain. But when he finally stood before Camilla, every carefully chosen phrase shattered beneath the weight of betrayal. His voice, calm at first, trembled with contained fury. He asked her if the letters were real, if the late-night calls had been her doing, if the deliberate smear against Catherine had been orchestrated with her blessing. Camilla, refusing to meet his eyes, insisted it was all a misunderstanding, a manipulation by those eager to see them divided. Yet the king knew better. He had seen the documents himself, heard the recordings, and felt the sting of humiliation that came from realizing the betrayal was not rumor but reality. The walls that had once sheltered their companionship now echoed with broken trust. Camilla pleaded for him to believe her, to see reason. But each denial only deepened the wound. Charles's words turned colder, sharper. "You've not only betrayed me," he said quietly, "you've betrayed the crown itself." The sentence struck like thunder. There was no shouting after that, only silence, the kind that swallows even the sound of breathing. In that stillness, both of them knew something sacred had fractured beyond repair. As word of the private confrontation spread through the inner palace staff, fear gripped those who had aligned themselves too closely with Camilla. Her senior aides, once confident and untouchable, began resigning overnight. Files disappeared, phones were wiped, and conversations turned cautious. Charles had ordered an internal review, not to humiliate his wife, but to cleanse the monarchy of the deceit that had seeped into its core. What began as a personal heartbreak had become a royal reckoning. Princess Anne, ever the stoic confidant, visited her brother quietly the following morning. She found him pacing his study, exhaustion written in the slump of his shoulders. Without judgment, she offered only one sentence that cut through the fog of despair. "Follow mother's example of courage." Those words carried the weight of history. They reminded Charles that leadership was not about punishment, it was about preservation. And something within the king shifted that day. Beneath the grief and disillusionment, a new determination began to form, a resolve, forged not in anger, but in clarity. He realized that the monarchy's survival depended not on appearances, but on truth. The betrayal had stripped away illusion and left only purpose. For the first time, Charles saw the path ahead with painful precision. And while the royal marriage trembled in secrecy, Catherine's quiet strength would soon become the king's greatest source of resolve. As chaos brewed in the palace corridors, Catherine stood as the calm within the storm. Her composure during royal visits, her empathy toward the public, and her quiet devotion to duty reminded Britain of what true royalty looks like. While others schemed and fractured, she radiated the dignity the monarchy desperately needed, a reflection of the late Queen's legacy reborn in the modern age. In the weeks following the confrontation between King Charles and Camilla, the monarchy found itself at a crossroads. The press was relentless, hungry for scandal and division. Yet Catherine never faltered. She did not respond with words or defenses, she responded with grace. While the tabloids twisted narratives and painted chaos within royal walls, Catherine walked into hospitals, schools, and charities with the same warmth and authenticity that had once defined the golden years of the late Queen Elizabeth's reign. Her silence was her shield. Every smile, every heartfelt conversation with a struggling mother or a sick child spoke louder than any statement could. In her restraint, she embodied strength. The people noticed. They saw a woman wronged but unbroken, criticized but composed. Public sympathy began to shift like a tide. Overnight, opinion polls turned in her favor, headlines softened. And even longtime critics admitted that her quiet endurance spoke volumes. Britain needed someone to believe in, a figure untouched by greed, scandal, or manipulation, and they found it in her. Catherine had become not just the Princess of Wales, but the beating heart of a weary nation. Her strength did not come from title or privilege. It came from an unshakable moral center. Inside the palace, something extraordinary began to happen. Senior royal advisors, once cautious, pragmatic, and loyal to stability above all, started to realign their loyalties. They saw in Catherine a leader for the future, a woman whose poise could restore the monarchy's fractured image. Behind closed doors, quiet conversations began to take place. Files were shifted, allegiances redrawn, and whispers of a new era echoed through the royal offices. It was not rebellion, it was recognition. The institution had found its moral compass again, and her name was Catherine. King Charles observed all of this from a distance. Weary from heartbreak, burdened by his crown, he watched Catherine navigate chaos with the same quiet assurance his mother once had. There was something hauntingly familiar in her demeanor, the same patience, the same empathy, the same unwavering sense of duty. In her, he saw a reflection of everything he feared the monarchy had lost. The power of restraint, the strength of compassion, and the kind of courage that does not roar but endures. That realization changed him. For the first time in years, Charles felt hope not for his reign, but for what would come after. A sense of destiny began to form around her, quiet but undeniable. Advisors spoke of it, the public sensed it, and the king himself could no longer ignore it. It wasn't ambition that drew her toward history, it was purpose. Catherine had become the living embodiment of the monarchy's soul, a bridge between tradition and tomorrow. Her presence steadied the turbulence, her grace softened the scandal, and her integrity silenced the chaos that threatened to consume the crown. But the public wasn't ready for what came next, a moment that would shake the monarchy to its core. It began as a closed meeting, attended only by Charles's most trusted inner circle. The king, weary yet resolute, took a deep breath and uttered words no one expected. Catherine embodies the spirit of the crown. She is, in every sense, the true queen. Silence fell. For the first time, a sitting monarch had publicly separated his emotional allegiance from his official marriage. Balmoral Castle had long been the setting for private reckonings within the royal family, and this one was no exception. As autumn wind swept across the Scottish estate, whispers of an impending announcement stirred anxiety through the corridors of power. Advisors had been summoned discreetly, each one told the same cryptic message. The king wishes to speak of the future. When they arrived, they found a man transformed. Gone was the hesitation that had shadowed Charles for weeks. In its place stood conviction, a heavy, solemn clarity born of heartbreak and duty. He no longer spoke as a husband struggling with betrayal, but as a sovereign ready to restore the monarchy's moral centre. Charles began by addressing what he called the collapse of trust within the crown. His words were deliberate, each syllable carrying the weight of years spent protecting an institution that had been corroded by vanity and manipulation. "The monarchy cannot survive on appearance," he said softly. "It must stand on virtue, and virtue must be seen." Around him, senior advisors exchanged uncertain glances. The implication was unmistakable. The king was preparing to make a declaration that would redefine loyalty within the royal hierarchy itself. Princess Anne, ever the voice of resolve, broke the silence. She spoke not as a sister, but as the heir to their mother's legacy, reminding everyone that the late queen had always believed moral strength was the crown's greatest jewel. "If Catherine is the one who carries that forward," Anne said, "then perhaps that is the truth we must accept." Across from her, Prince William said nothing, but the quiet pride in his expression revealed everything. For him, this wasn't just vindication, it was justice for the woman who had endured every trial without faltering. But not everyone shared that sentiment. Camilla's closest allies within the court panicked at the mere suggestion that the king might speak publicly of his admiration for Catherine. They understood that even a symbolic acknowledgement could destroy what remained of Camilla's standing. Letters were written, advisors pleaded for restraint, and long-serving courtiers begged the king to reconsider. Yet Charles remained unmoved. He had made his choice. To him, the monarchy's future was no longer about titles or ceremonies. It was about truth. Within hours, word began to leak. Courtiers whispered of a private statement circulating under the title, "The True Queen." No one knew if it was real or rumour, but fragments reached the press, igniting speculation across the world. Could the king truly be preparing to elevate Catherine in spirit, even while bound by law to another? As the palace scrambled to contain the chaos, a draft of the declaration was finalised. It spoke of honour, resilience, and the rebirth of royal dignity through Catherine's quiet example. Every word was chosen with precision, every line an act of defiance cloaked in grace. And yet, what Charles saw as redemption, others saw as rebellion. His council warned that this statement would divide the nation, but Charles, with eyes fixed on history rather than headlines, refused to yield. He signed the document with a trembling hand, knowing there was no turning back. But when Charles's declaration reached the public, the world realized this wasn't a symbolic statement. It was a royal reckoning. The British press went into meltdown. Headlines screamed betrayal, loyalty, and redemption all at once. Crowds gathered outside Buckingham Palace, chanting Catherine's name. For the first time in decades, the monarchy wasn't divided by lineage. It was united by love for one woman. And yet, behind the celebration, Camilla's world began to collapse, as even her closest friends turned away in stunned disbelief. The moment King Charles's declaration was released, the media erupted in a frenzy. The BBC interrupted programming with urgent coverage. Tabloids flooded front pages with words like shock, rebellion, and the true Queen, and international networks replayed his statement on loop. For the first time in his reign, Charles's voice didn't sound uncertain. It carried conviction, finality, and a kind of quiet sorrow that resonated across borders. His words had been simple but unshakable. Catherine embodied everything the crown was meant to: represent compassion, dignity, and grace. It was a declaration of moral truth, and the world felt it. Public reaction was instantaneous. Within hours, social media transformed into a tidal wave of admiration for the Princess of Wales. Crowds filled the streets around the palace gates, holding up signs that read, "Long live the true Queen," and "Catherine, our hope." The monarchy, once accused of being out of touch, suddenly felt human again. People saw in Catherine the same resilience that once defined Queen Elizabeth II, a reminder that the throne was not just a seat of power but a symbol of endurance. The more the world praised her, the more they questioned Camilla's place beside the king. Camilla, overwhelmed by the backlash, withdrew from public view entirely. Her diary of engagements, once packed with high-profile appearances, was quietly cleared. Royal aides cited health reasons, but insiders whispered that it was humiliation, not illness, that had driven her into seclusion. Friends who had once defended her now kept their distance, fearful of being associated with a fading queen whose influence had crumbled overnight. Behind closed doors, her world grew smaller, lonelier, and quieter by the day. Meanwhile, politicians and world leaders issued cautious statements. They praised Catherine's composure, her unwavering service, and her ability to rise above personal attacks with grace. None dared to openly criticize the king's decision, how could they, when the public adored him for it? What was once seen as a royal scandal began to feel like a moral correction, a cleansing moment for an institution long shadowed by controversy. And through it all, Prince William said nothing. No press conferences, no interviews, not even a single quote. Yet, when cameras caught him standing beside his father at a public event days later, the emotion in his eyes said more than words ever could. There was pride, yes, but also a deep, painful gratitude. The nation saw it. They understood it. The king had not just defended Catherine, he had restored her honor before the entire world. In an unexpected twist, the monarchy experienced a surge in popularity. Approval ratings soared, attendance at royal events tripled, and even critics admitted that the family seemed reborn under Catherine's influence. The crown, once burdened by division, now found new life through unity. Unity built on her quiet strength. The story had shifted from scandal to salvation, and the people believed again. But for Charles, this wasn't just about public favor, it was about justice. And justice demanded consequence. Once the most powerful woman in Britain, Queen Camilla now found herself isolated and stripped of authority. Her closest allies gone, her trust shattered, she withdrew from Windsor, reportedly spending nights alone in Ray Mill House. It wasn't exile by decree, but by dignity. The monarchy had moved on, and for the first time, Camilla realized she had lost, not only her crown but her king. In the quiet aftermath of King Charles's declaration, the royal court shifted almost overnight. The once unshakable influence Camilla wielded began to evaporate, piece by piece, like mist in the morning sun. Her advisors, once bold in their allegiance, now avoided her gaze in corridors. Invitations to official events stopped arriving. Her name, once spoken with deference, was now whispered in caution. Those who had benefited from her favor scrambled to align themselves with Catherine, the woman now hailed as the monarchy's moral center. It was a transformation that happened not through command, but through conscience. The kingdom had chosen its queen, and it wasn't Camilla. One by one, her royal patronages were reassigned. Charities that had once proudly carried her name began issuing statements of gratitude for her years of service, a polite euphemism for farewell. Behind those gestures of formality lay the truth. The palace was quietly dismantling her influence. Catherine's calendar, filled with engagements that had once belonged to Camilla, her presence now symbolizing renewal and integrity. The transition was never officially announced, but the message was unmistakable: the torch had passed. Then came the moment that marked the final blow. A portrait of Queen Camilla, once hung prominently in an official gallery, was quietly removed and replaced by a newly commissioned painting of Catherine, the Princess of Wales. It was symbolic, but symbolism has always been the language of monarchy. The public noticed, the press noticed, and, most painfully, Camilla noticed. In the echo of that silent act, she understood that her reign as the centre of royal life had come to an unspoken end. King Charles, burdened by duty and sorrow, began to distance himself from her publicly. During state events, their interactions were polite but hollow, the warmth between them extinguished by the weight of disappointment. Observers described him as a man haunted not by anger, but by regret. He attended ceremonies beside Catherine and William with a quiet dignity that spoke louder than any statement could. Every gesture, every glance, made it clear. His loyalty had shifted, and his heart had chosen where the future of the crown belonged. For Camilla, the humiliation was unbearable. The woman who had once held the monarchy in her palm now found herself invisible, confined to private residences, surrounded by silence. Friends described her as fragile, withdrawn, and consumed by reflection. But behind her retreat was something deeper, a realization that her power had never truly belonged to her. It had been borrowed, and now it was gone. The palace walls, once her fortress, had become her prison. The laughter of courtiers that once echoed around her now felt distant, foreign. The royal family she once shaped had turned its gaze toward Catherine, the embodiment of everything Camilla could never be. And as the monarchy prepared to turn a page in its history, one final act remained. Behind closed doors, the king drafted what would become his most defining announcement. One that would not only secure Catherine's place in history, but change the royal lineage forever. And that announcement would seal Catherine's destiny forever, changing royal history in one breathtaking moment. When the bells of Westminster rang that morning, the world held its breath. The king had chosen to speak directly to his people. In a televised address, his voice trembled with emotion. In spirit, in duty, and in grace, Catherine is the true queen of this realm. The crowd erupted. It wasn't about titles or bloodlines anymore, it was about honor, resilience, and the rebirth of monarchy through a woman who had earned the crown of hearts. The moment was more than symbolic, it was transformative. Britain, long divided over royal controversies and shifting loyalties, now found itself unified under a single truth. The king's words did what no royal decree had achieved in years. They rekindled faith. Across cities and villages, from London's crowded squares to distant countrysides, people spoke her name with reverence. Catherine wasn't crowned in gold. She was crowned in love. Her humility disarmed critics, her strength inspired families, and her unwavering grace gave the crown its humanity back. Charles's address was deeply personal. It wasn't a speech read from a script. It was a confession from a weary monarch who had seen both love and loss define his reign. The monarchy, he said, is not a relic, it is a reflection. And if we are to endure, we must reflect the best among us. Those words pierced through centuries of tradition, signaling that the crown was no longer bound by lineage but by merit. His voice, cracking with both pride and pain, became a bridge between eras, the king who restored the moral core of his dynasty. Catherine, watching from a quiet royal chamber, had tears in her eyes. To her, the moment wasn't about triumph, it was about responsibility. Her heart ached for what had been lost, even as the world celebrated what had been gained. She had never sought power or recognition. Her greatest strength was her refusal to claim it. And yet here she stood recognized not because she demanded it, but because she had earned it through unshakable dignity. Her composure that day reminded millions of the late Queen Elizabeth II, whose memory seemed to hover over every word the king spoke. It was as if her legacy had found its successor not in blood, but in spirit. Prince William's reaction became an image etched into history. Standing beside his father, he watched with eyes brimming with emotion, the weight of the moment written across his face. It wasn't just pride, it was love, gratitude, and the quiet realization that the woman who had carried him through storms now carried the monarchy itself. Truth. A son honoring the strength of his wife, a king acknowledging the queen that fate had chosen. Camilla's absence spoke louder than any presence could have. There was no malice, no spectacle, just silence. In that absence, the monarchy rediscovered its authenticity. The whispers of scandal that once haunted the palace faded into the distance, replaced by a new narrative, one built on hope, integrity, and moral rebirth. By the day's end, the nation stood united in a way it hadn't been in decades. Across the world, messages poured in words of admiration, support, and awe. Commentators called it a spiritual coronation, a moment that blurred the line between monarchy and humanity. The king had not crowned Catherine by ceremony, but by conviction, and in doing so, he had rewritten the legacy of the House of Windsor. The monarchy, once bruised and divided, now stood renewed, stronger than it had been in generations. The people believed again. And yet, even as the nation celebrated, one lingering mystery remained a secret, buried deep in the betrayal that began it all. Months later, a sealed document surfaced, one that revealed the true origin of the betrayal. It wasn't just jealousy, it was survival. Camilla's actions, though cruel, stemmed from fear. Fear of being erased by history, fear of a queen she could never outshine. And in that truth, King Charles found closure. He had not only declared Catherine as the true queen, he had ended the monarchy's longest war, the War of Hearts. The report, hidden deep within the private archives of the palace, contained more than gossip or conjecture. It held the remnants of a struggle that had been festering for years, a conflict between love and legacy, between a woman's desperation to hold on to power and a monarch's yearning for redemption. The findings confirmed what few dared to whisper aloud. Camilla's betrayal was not born from hatred, but from terror. The terror of watching herself fade from relevance in the shadow of Catherine's rising grace. The terror of knowing that the nation's love had shifted, that her influence was no longer her own. In every secret meeting, every calculated whisper, there was a trace of desperation, a woman clinging to a crown she knew was slipping through her fingers. When King Charles read the final pages, he did not react with anger, but with a deep, almost painful calm. The truth, though heavy, brought him a strange sense of peace. He understood now that what had transpired was not merely a betrayal of trust, it was a collision of destiny. Camilla's downfall was inevitable, just as Catherine's ascension had been written in quiet acts of loyalty, compassion, and strength. For Charles, the revelation marked the end of turmoil and the beginning of acceptance. He had chosen love, guided by integrity, over love rooted in ambition, and in doing so, he had restored balance to the monarchy that had wavered on the edge of collapse. Catherine, in her characteristic grace, refused to comment publicly when the existence of the report became known. Her silence was not weakness, it was power. She understood that dignity requires no defense, and truth needs no echo. While the world dissected every word, every implication, she carried on with her duties, her humility transforming scandal into reverence. To the people, she became more than a royal figure. She became a symbol of moral endurance. Her refusal to retaliate was the final act that cemented her image as the embodiment of virtue, a woman whose strength came not from defiance, but from restraint. Princess Anne, ever the moral compass of the family, stood firmly beside her brother during these revelations. She reminded him that leadership was not about perfection, it was about principle. Under her guidance, the royal family began to heal. The wounds of betrayal gave way to unity, and the Royal institution that once seemed fractured now stood stronger than before. The monarchy, tempered by sorrow and purified by truth, had been reborn. As time passed, the public's admiration for Catherine only deepened. Polls, newspapers, and everyday conversations echoed the same sentiment. She was the heart of modern royalty, the living bridge between tradition and tomorrow. And though history would record Charles as the king who restored honour to the throne, it would also remember the quiet power behind his redemption, the woman who never needed a coronation to be crowned. And as Britain turns a new page, one truth echoes through the corridors of history: the crown may rest on the king's head, but the heart of the monarchy beats within its true queen, Catherine. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.